Today at 10, a combative encounter between Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer in their first head-to-head TV debate of the election. Two men clashed on the NHS, immigration, the cost of living and taxation.
Mark my words, Labour will raise your taxes. It's in their DNA.
This is the Prime Minister who's been part of a government that has put up tax 26 times.
And the debate is still going on. We'll bring you all the latest.
We heard claims about taxes in the NHS. We'll put it all in context and explain more about which claims do and don't add up.
Also tonight, cancelled operations at major London hospitals after a cyber attack has a major impact on services. In India, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi declares a historic third victory, but appears not to have won the predicted large majority. And the military horses injured after bolting through London, then and now.
On BBC London, we examine Labour's pledge to rebuild some of the capital's hospitals and the impact on people with disabilities after blue badge theft quadruples in a decade.
Good evening. In the biggest set-piece event of the election so far, the two men vying to be Prime Minister are going head-to-head in the first TV debate, which is taking place in Salford. There's been plenty of interrupting as Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer have clashed over the cost of living crisis and NHS waiting lists, as well as taxation and education, with Mr Sunak anxious to defend his party's record and Sir Keir to establish his credentials to govern. While our political editor, Chris Mason, was of course watching. Let's go live to him in Salford now. Chris.
Yes, hello, good evening. So the debate continues, it's into its last few minutes. It has been personal, it has been angry, it has been aggressive, a sense of how much the two men bluntly don't like each other. Rishi Sunak on the stickiest of wickets, but scrapping really, really hard, trying to draw a line between the past and the future. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, constantly saying, well, hang on a minute, you can't walk away from the past, Rishi Sunak, after 14 years of Conservative government. We also got a very clear sense tonight of the differing worldviews of the two men who want to be your Prime Minister from that first week in July after the election. Differing worldviews on private education, private healthcare and membership of the European Court of Human Rights. As I say, the debate's been going on for around about an hour. Here are the 5 minutes of key moments. So tonight you can turn things around, Prime Minister. The big question for Rishi Sunak. Thank you for having me. The polls aren't budging. Could this be the moment for a game changer? And here's the guy who wants his job. Tonight the night you sealed the deal. Pleasantries, smiles, and you can bet for both of them a bag of nerves. The debate underway and the biggest topic of our time, the cost of living, set out by Paula from Huddersfield in the studio audience.
My savings are gone and I'm genuinely worried about my future. I don't think you actually understand how this is for people like me. So what can you do about that?
Both men expressed sympathy and then the argument began.
Of course I know everyone is only just starting to feel the benefits of it, but inflation is back to normal, wages are growing, taxes are now being cut. Keir Starmer would put all that progress at risk. He would put up everyone's taxes by £2,000.
Keir Starmer.
Paula, I just don't know how you feel when you hear a Prime Minister say, having heard what you're going through, that the plan is working, it's all right. I meet so many people who are struggling with their bills, and the Prime Minister just keeps saying he lives in a different world.
Next, listen to this exchange on NHS waiting lists, where the audience laughed at the Prime Minister.
We are now making progress, the waiting lists are coming down, but what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
Wait, 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you'd get them down. 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down.
Because they were coming down from where they were when they were higher.
7.2.
And they're now on their way down. They are down, right?
And both offered direct answers to this question.
If you had loved ones on a long waiting list for surgery, would you, if you felt that that was the only way forward, use private healthcare? Rishi Sunak?
Yes.
Keir Starmer?
No.
What about how much tax you might have to pay after the election?
Please raise your hand if I am wrong. You, as Prime Minister, will not raise income tax. You will not raise national insurance in the next Parliament. And other than Labour on private schools, you will not raise VAT. Thank you for that instructive moment.
So how will either of them pay for things?
We will raise specific taxes, and we've been really clear what they are. We've already dealt with the tax break on private schools. We want to end the non-dom status completely. I think that the super rich should be paying their tax.
Rishi Sunak?
Yes, well, we have already scrapped the non-dom regime.
And then promises, finger-wagging, interruptions on pensions.
Please let
I've
Mr Sunak
announced
finish.
the triple lock plus, so that we raise the personal allowance for pensioners and ensure that the state pension is never subject to tax. That's what you'll get under a future Conservative government. Keir Starmer hasn't matched that pledge, which means for the first time in our country's history, if Labour are elected, pensioners will pay tax. I do not think that is right, and you should explain to everyone why you think pensioners will be paying a retirement tax under your government.
The big problem with Liz Truss is that she made unfunded tax cuts.
All right.
But the Prime Minister is doing the same thing. We're going to go round the circle.
Next, it was Stephen from Warrington.
Politicians have broken so many promises on immigration. Why should I trust either of you?
And we will need to take bold action to bring it down, whether that's legal migration, where we're going to introduce a new legal cap to guarantee that it will come down every year, or the boats, which you mentioned, where we got the numbers down last year by a third, and now we have a deterrent ready to go. Migrants have been detained, the flights will go in July, but only if I'm your Prime Minister.
We need to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade, making a huge amount of money, putting some of the most vulnerable people in boats across the Channel. They're making a fortune.
And the tension was rising.
What are you going to do? Just tell everybody. What are you going to do with illegal migrants who arrive?
Please, can we please, gentlemen, we will lower our voices.
And there was a dividing line on this specific measure.
If your Rwanda plan is blocked by the courts, and will this appear in your manifesto, that you would remove the UK from the European Convention on Human Rights? Is that part of your plan? Will that be in your manifesto?
I'm crystal clear. I believe all our plans are compliant with our international obligations, but if I'm forced to choose between securing our borders and our country's security or a foreign court, I'm going to choose our country's security every single time.
If I'm Prime Minister, we will not pull out of international agreements and international law, which is respected the world over. Because I want the UK to be a respected player on the global stage, not a pariah.
And this debate is not yet done. When it is, the spin will begin to attempt to answer the big question: who won? Chris Mason, BBC News in Salford.
Well, lots of claims and counterclaims there, and BBC Verify's Nick Eardley has been looking at them. Nick.
Thank you very much, Rita. Yeah, as we've just heard from Chris, lots of claims made tonight. We've had a team of fact-checkers looking at what's been said to help you make your decisions about who you want to be Prime Minister. Let's start with tax. Here's a reminder of what was said.
Keir Starmer would put all that progress at risk. He would put up everyone's taxes by £2,000. £2,000 in higher taxes for every working family in our country.
He's the British expert on tax rises. They're at the highest level for 70 years.
Let's start with that claim that taxes would go up £2,000 for every working family under Labour. That's based on a dossier the Conservative Party put together. It claims it's a £38.5 billion black hole in Labour's spending plans. But this is important. Some of the assumptions behind the calculations to get this are questionable. It assumes, for example, that it's always a lot less efficient for the public sector to do things than the private sector. So a dollop of caution here when it comes to that claim. Labour, by the way, have made some questionable claims of their own. They didn't come up tonight, but there is more on the BBC website. Next, the overall taxation level. It is right to say, as you can see from this graphic, that the tax take since the general election has gone up compared to the size of the economy. That is. You can see it going up. It's forecast to actually go up quite a lot towards the end there, in part because income tax thresholds have been frozen. That means as you earn more money in line with inflation, you pay more tax. Rishi Sunak has cut national insurance recently, but as you can see from this, Keir Starmer was right to say overall taxes are up. Next, have a look at this exchange on the NHS.
But we are now making progress. The waiting lists are coming down. But what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
The waiting list is 7.2 million. They're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you get them down. 7.2 million. They're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down.
Because they were coming down from where they were when they were higher.
7.2.
And they're now on their way down. They are down, right? Yes, because the NHS...
You can actually see where they're both coming from here. This is the picture when it comes to waiting lists, just for England, by the way. You can see they go up quite significantly after the pandemic. They reach 7.8 million waits. You can see it's come down a bit here, but the levels now are higher than they were when Rishi Sunak took over as Prime Minister. He says that a lot of this is down to strikes, and it is true to say they have had some impact. Finally, let's look at small boats crossings. Rishi Sunak said they were down a third. Keir Starmer said they were up this year. Well, this is the picture. I think we can show you a graphic here. They did fall significantly last year. The 2023 figure was down from 2022, but they were still the second highest on record. And so far, at this point of 2024, they are the highest they've been on record. So, Rita, some context when it comes to helping make your minds up. There's a lot more of this fact-checking stuff on the BBC website.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. Nick Eardley there. Well, let's go back now to our political editor, Chris Mason, who is in Salford. And Chris, the question that everyone wants the answer to, who won?
That is the big question, isn't it, Rita? The debate has just finished in that building behind me in the last couple of minutes. The men shaking hands after some testy exchanges towards the conclusion of the debate around the whole question, massive question of national security. But the debate finished, the spin is now beginning. Let me just bring you a few things that have pinged into my phone as we were listening to Nick just there. The Conservatives saying that Keir Starmer looked like a deer in the headlights. Labour are saying desperate stuff from Rishi Sunak, shouty, hectoring. He didn't want to listen. And you know what? When you tease away underneath that spin, you get to the essence, to a degree, of how the two men pitched themselves tonight. So from Keir Starmer, I think you could sense the nerves of what is at stake for him. The opinion polls suggest he is well ahead. In other words, there's the danger in moments like this that lead could shrivel. From Rishi Sunak, politically he's back against the wall, needing to show not least his own side that he's still got fight. And I think he demonstrated that tonight. His critics on the Labour side suggested that amounted to hectoring. So, who did win? Well, ultimately, that is for you at home to decide. I don't think tonight was necessarily a game changer. What we can see is the tension between the two of them, and my goodness, there's still a few weeks left, and there are plenty more of these debates to come. A BBC debate involving 7 participants, neither of these two gentlemen, on Friday night. 3 weeks tomorrow on the BBC, there will be a rematch, a head-to-head between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. And at that point, millions of people will be voting by post and will be a week and a day away from polling itself. So these are the opening skirmishes. No game-changing moment overall, I would say. A doubling down on existing arguments from this first couple of weeks. And the campaign trundles on.
Chris, thank you very much. Chris Mason there. We will have more on the debate later in the programme. And there will be more on BBC Two and Newsnight.
Thank you, Reeta. Yes, some clashes, as you know, in that ITV leaders debate with Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer trading blows on tax, the NHS and immigration. Who will be happier tonight? And what does it mean for the election campaign and, most importantly, for you? We'll hear from both parties live on Newsnight, plus our top-tier panel, broadcaster Piers Morgan and the head of the RMT union, Mick Lynch, are in the studio throughout. Don't miss Newsnight on BBC Two, BBC News and iPlayer at 10:30. See you then.
Let's take a look now at some other stories from the election campaign today. 2 people have been arrested after Reform UK's leader Nigel Farage had a drink thrown over him while he was campaigning at Clacton in Essex. Police say a 25-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of assault. Separately, a man was detained on suspicion of assaulting an emergency worker. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey has promised free personal care to older or disabled people at home in England. He was campaigning in Cheadle in Greater Manchester, a seat that he hopes to win from the Tories, bringing, in his words, the blue wall down. And the SNP leader John Swinney says the UK government is taking a hostile approach to migration. He said Scotland has a shortage of people to undertake jobs in areas such as social care, and the country shouldn't be putting up barriers. Now, many of you have already contacted us during the campaign, and we want to hear more about what's important to you and to your community. It's part of Your Voice, Your Vote, where you get the chance to tell us what you care about and where you want us to report from. You can find details of how to get in touch on the BBC News website and also the app. Now, in other news, several major hospitals in London have declared a critical incident because of a cyber attack. Some operations have been cancelled and there have been problems in particular with blood transfusions and test results. Graham Satchell reports.
We don't yet know exactly how many operations have been cancelled, but NHS England has declared this a critical incident. As well as surgery, blood transfusions and blood tests have all been affected across a large part of the capital. So what's the scale of the problem? The attack itself is on a company called Synovis, which provides blood services to the NHS. It's hit a number of major hospitals, including Guy's and St Thomas's, King's College Hospital, the Royal Brompton, the Evelina Children's Hospital and a number of GP services. Patients who've had their operations cancelled have been left devastated.
I was initially just sort of dumbfounded, I suppose, and then upset and angry about it because of the delay and because when you've been sitting there since the crack of dawn in a smock waiting to have a open heart surgery, however calm I try to feel, you still get a bit nervous.
Donna Nanton, who has head and neck cancer and didn't want to be filmed, told us her cancer surgery has also been cancelled.
It's quite important that this cancer is taken from my body so that it doesn't spread anywhere else. Until it's out, I've got no hope, really. I worry about the children. I worry about my future. So, yeah, it's all a bit just overwhelming.
Cyber attacks on major public services are thankfully still rare, but the consequences can be serious. In this instance, the cyber attacker is demanding a ransom, and experts are saying it could be weeks rather than days before all of this can be resolved.
Some patients are being redirected to other hospitals, and the NHS is reassuring people that emergency services are still open. The government's National Cyber Security Centre is investigating the attack, and hospital bosses have apologised for the disruption. Graham Satchell, BBC News.
Manchester City are due to launch an unprecedented legal case next week against the Premier League over the organisation's commercial rules and whether its restrictions on sponsorship deals are financially fair. Our sports editor Dan Rowan joins us now from the Etihad Stadium. What's this all about, Dan?
Reeta, we've known for some time that the Premier League faced the threat of legal action from one of its member clubs over the rules that govern so-called associated party transactions, or the deals that some clubs sign with companies linked to their owners. And now we know it's been elevated. It's turned from a threat to reality, and it's Manchester City, no less, the dominant force in the English game, who are taking this action. And according to the Times, they're arguing that these rules are unlawful and anti-competitive, that they're discriminatory against Middle Eastern owners, that they're seeking damages from the league, and that they're the victims of what they describe as a tyranny of the majority. Now, the clubs that are backing the Premier League, no doubt, would argue that these rules are required to maintain competitive balance and to prevent rich clubs from over-inflating certain sponsorship deals. I think what's really key is whether or not this arbitration, which is due to start next week, has any bearing on the much more serious and bigger legal dispute that's rumbling on between City and the league. This relates to that unprecedented catalogue of more than 100 charges that City were hit with last year over alleged financial rule breaches. City deny wrongdoing. A hearing's not due to take place in that case until later in the year. But what's certain is that this is the latest example of disunity in a league that appears ever more fractured.
Thank you very much. Dan Rowan reporting there. Now to the election that dwarfs ours, that of India, which is the world's largest democracy with nearly 1 billion people registered to vote. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has claimed victory, but his party's performance appears to have fallen well short of expectations. Counting is still continuing, with his Hindu nationalist BJP party poised to win the most seats, but it could fail to secure a majority in its own right. Our South Asia correspondent Yogita Limai joins us now from Delhi. Yogita.
It might seem strange that everyone's talking about how the Prime Minister has won rather than the win itself, but that is in large part because of Mr. Modi, who said at the start of this election that he and his party would win more than 400 seats, and they seem very far off from that right now. And it's quite clear that, unlike what was much anticipated, this wasn't a one-sided contest.
A widely expected moment and a historic one. It's only the second time that an Indian Prime Minister has won a third term. It is the win of our commitment to a developed India, Mr. Modi told his supporters. But it isn't the victory he wanted, winning fewer seats than the last election, which will damage the air of invincibility that has surrounded Mr. Modi and the BJP over the past 10 years. Perhaps the biggest shock came from Ayodhya, where Prime Minister Modi inaugurated a grand Hindu temple in January at a site that had been disputed by Hindus and Muslims. Expected to galvanize Hindu voters, but the ruling party was defeated here by a large margin. This is how the opposition Congress took in the results, with an almost equal fervour.
It's rare to see this kind of jubilation amid the losing side, but that's because over the past 10 years, the Congress party has suffered humiliating election defeats. And what that has resulted in is a party whose confidence was so low that they didn't believe that they could actually launch a proper challenge. So this is a celebration for being significantly back in the game.
Long live Rahul Gandhi, supporters chanted the name of a leader from India's most prominent political dynasty, but whose capabilities and future were under question. Today will mark a point of resurgence.
The country has unanimously and clearly stated, we do not like the way they have run this country, we do not appreciate the way they have attacked the constitution, we do not appreciate the way they have run this country for the last decade. So that is a huge message to Mr. Narendra Modi.
It's a bittersweet victory for the BJP. With the numbers they've got, they cannot pass laws unilaterally. They will need to take others on board. Some will see this as a win for Indian democracy. Yogita Limai, BBC News, Delhi.
Here, a newborn baby girl found abandoned in East London on a freezing cold night in January is the third child to be left by the same parents. DNA tests established that baby Elsa is the sibling of a boy and a girl found in very similar circumstances in 2017 and 2019. Sancha Berg reports.
It was a bitterly cold day in January when a baby girl, less than an hour old, was found here in East London. Hospital staff called her Elsa, after the Frozen character. The BBC can now report that Elsa has two full siblings, Harry and Roman. All three babies were abandoned in similar circumstances within 2 miles of each other. The baby boy, Harry, was found in Plaistow in September 2017, abandoned shortly after he was born. A newborn girl, Roman, came 16 months later in January 2019 in a park close to the Roman Road, after which she was named. And Elsa, also newborn, was discovered this year, just a few hundred yards away. All 3 children's names have since been changed. This is where baby Harry was found back in 2017. Since then, 2 of his siblings have been abandoned in very similar circumstances, just hours after they were born. Judge Carol Atkinson said it was very, very unusual for one baby to be abandoned in modern Britain. For 3 babies to be left in this way by the same parents was, she said, of enormous interest. I asked one of the leading experts whether she'd come across a similar case.
Well, I've done research in various ways for over 20 years, and the answer is absolutely no. But I personally have never come across 3 brand new borns from the same parents, both parents, it seems.
The 3 children are safe, adopted or in care. Their mother has not come forward despite multiple appeals over nearly 7 years by the Metropolitan Police. They said today their investigation continues. Sancha Berg, BBC News.
Now, remember this extraordinary scene last month of 5 military horses galloping through the streets of London. Well, some of the horses were badly injured, but now they are all recovering well. Chichi Zundu has more.
Back in April, these images of 2 horses bolting through the streets of London went around the world. These 2, along with 3 others from the lifeguards of the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment, were on a daily morning exercise when they were spooked by the sound of construction rubble being dropped from a height close to them. But today, the Army confirmed the Cavalry Grey Vida and the Cavalry Black Quaker, who was also badly injured, both seen here arriving at the Horses Trust for more R&R, are making remarkable progress. The 3 other horses have already returned to duty and will probably take part in the King's birthday celebration next weekend. 3 of the injured soldiers have also returned back to work, while 2 others are still recuperating. Vida and Quaker are still being cared for by specialist vets, but it is believed they too will make a full recovery and eventually rejoin their regiment. Chichi Zundu, BBC News.
All 4 home nations are involved in qualifying matches for the Women's Euros tonight. Scotland comfortably beat Israel, but it was England in desperate need of a win after losing to France at home. Now they're playing in Saint-Etienne. Our sports correspondent Joe Curry was watching.
England arrived in Saint-Etienne with a point to prove. A wobbly start had left their campaign wavering, but in a half-empty stadium, it was a small group of Lioness fans who could be heard loudest. And it was the visitors who fired the first warning shot. The goalkeeper, though, equal to it. But even she couldn't keep out this thunderbolt as Georgia Stanway took aim and fired. Like an arrow. Her side in front. Confidence high, and we haven't said that in a while. England continued to attack, Rousseau timing her run perfectly and heading the Lionesses into a 2-0 lead. The change of ends, though, brought about a change of fortunes. The captain at fault as the referee pointed to the spot. Penalty easily dispatched. Was this France's invitation back into the game? Well, they certainly tried, but Hannah Hampton kept the door shut. A significant win, England's first in France since 1973, and qualification in their own hands. And it was some night for Scotland's Martha Thomas as she scored 4 goals in her side's 5-0 win over Israel. The match was played in Budapest and behind closed doors due to security concerns. That victory keeps Scotland at the top of Group B2. Wales thought they'd claimed a 2-1 win away to Ukraine when Jess Fishlock unleashed the spectacular to put them in front. But the home side equalised in the 97th minute to ensure the points were shared. And Northern Ireland remained third in B3. Despite going ahead in Portugal through Lauren Wade, they conceded twice before the break to suffer a 2-1 defeat. Joe Curry, BBC News.
More now on our top story, the first head-to-head TV debate of this election. And our deputy political editor, Vicky Young, is in Salford in the so-called spin room where politicians and advisers seek to persuade journalists that their man came out on top. It looks very busy, Vicky. What are you being told? Yeah, pretty heated here, as you would imagine. You also won't be surprised, Reeta, to hear that both sides think that their man won. They are going round all the cameras, doing TV, doing radio. You can see politicians like Michael Gove over there and others were streeting for Labour. So what they're saying to us now, from the Conservatives, they say that Rishi Sunak came out fighting. They say that he was putting doubt in people's minds about Sir Keir Starmer and particularly about tax policies. Now, it was very clear that Rishi Sunak wasn't so keen to talk about the past. He wanted to talk about the future. That's, of course, because he has a long record to defend. And he said, of course, that he had a plan. So the Conservative allies here think that he did land some punches. But on the other side, Labour figures saying to me, look, after 14 years of Tory chaos, it was very clear that the audience watching wanted change. And they said that the best thing that came up with, that the Tories came up with, the only attack lines that were good were ones that weren't true. And just very quickly, there's been one snap poll. It's just a snapshot, 1,600 people from YouGov. They were asked who did best. Rishi Sunak, 51%, Sir Keir Starmer, 49%. So almost even. There's plenty more to come in the next few weeks, though, for people to decide. Indeed there is. Thank you very much. Vicky Young there. And just before the weather, a word on the special coverage coming up over the next few days on the programme as people commemorate 80 years since D-Day, when Allied troops landed on the coast of northern France and began the country's liberation from Nazi occupation. Here's Sophie. We are on our way to Normandy. More than 40 British D-Day veterans are on board this ferry. Roy Harrison, who served with the Royal Navy, is one of them. You can hear their stories on the BBC News 6 and 10 this week. Time for the weather now. Here is Chris Fawkes. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Rita. We've had quite a bit of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain today, but a cold front has been clearing the skies, and that happened in Wales just in time to have this lovely sunset in Gwynedd. Mind you, there have been some pretty big shower clouds across Scotland. There'll be loads more of those through the rest of the week, and the cold front dropped temperatures in a big way. Edinburgh going down from 21 to about 16 degrees, and that drop of 5 or 6 degrees Celsius was quite typical as the colder air worked its way through. The cold front still bringing a bit of rain across East Anglia and South East England right now, but it will clear out of the way. Clear skies follow, showers to near coastal areas through the rest of the night. Now, temperatures are already getting down into single figures. The coldest spots could get down to about 1 degree Celsius. So it is going to be a cold night for a summer night for sure. And that's because we've got this cold polar air mass in place. So in other words, that's come from a long way north. Many of us will start the day on a chilly but sunny note. It's one of those mornings where you probably want an extra layer if you're heading outside. There will be loads of showers around, particularly across the northern half of the country, some of them with hail and thunder, especially in Scotland. But for Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, southern England, fewer showers. The weather should feel OK, even though temperatures below average. It's across the north where we've got the cold air and some chilly winds. And, to be honest, our weather patterns kind of got stuck. We've got this blocking pattern out in the Atlantic, and that means we continue to see this northwesterly airflow in the jet stream overhead, and that's dragging in the colder air across the northern half of the UK. So in other words, the weather's not really going to change a great deal through the rest of this week, even into the weekend beyond. Again, Thursday, loads of showers, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Hail and thunder in those, still feeling cold with those blustery winds for northern areas. The south still not doing too badly. Largely dry with sunny spells. And as I say, little overall change through Friday the weekend. If you want to see a change in the weather picture, well, you probably have to wait until next week. Rita.
Thank you very much, Chris. And that is tonight's BBC News at 10. On BBC One, it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Good night.